Hi folks, it's Brendan at Navigate World Whisky. On the channel we're diving quite deep into rums in several episodes, but we're starting off with a brief history of nearly everything in rum. And who better than Daniele Biondi from Maison and Velier, one of the world's rum experts, to take us through 5 centuries in 5 minutes as it applies to rum. We're going to cut straight to him. Check it out.
Quite difficult to do 5 centuries in 5 minutes, but it's a very complex history behind. Everybody started the history of rum, at least in the Caribbean, with Christopher Columbus, 1492, and actually is when the first sugarcane arrived in the Caribbean region, brought by the Spanish actually. And they landed in what we know as Dominican Republic, and then they moved to Cuba, and then they moved to the Central America, searching for gold, and more than agricultural products. Barbados, we have the real first information about the rum production, 1630s, 1640s. So it was more a British tradition, because actually the Spanish came back to Europe, so they left the Caribbean region and they came back only in the first part of 19th century. So let's say that the very first information about rum production were British, so British heritage, and in the same period also French came to the islands, what we know as Martinique and Guadeloupe. And then, the Spanish arrived a lot of time after, and that's why they started, the production of rum already with the new techniques and technologies. So today, the Caribbean region is divided in these, apart some exceptions, but in these 3 main culture, let's say, and in the 30 territories of the region, there are mainly these 3 cultures and these 3 styles of rum. So
Okay, so we heard from Daniele there. Just to re-emphasize, 3 essential cultures of rum production that established themselves around the world: the Latin, the British, or the French, often known as agricole rum styles. It's quite obvious that you can't classify rum by color. Color doesn't tell you too much historically about what a rum is, and nor does country even. Rather, as we look into sort of understanding and unpacking and putting rum into its correct classes, we start to look at production method. We cut back to Daniele to unpack this a little bit more for us.
Even if the so-called French style and Latin style are quite consistent, because actually the producers in these areas, they do rum in a similar way, so they are quite consistent styles. For the French area, it's mainly for a system of rules that they adopted, so the AOC, Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée. So it's a quite strict system of rules to produce it. And the Latin style also is consistent for different reasons, because they always search the higher productions in terms of volume, and so they also started to produce in a standard way to reach this goal of the large production. The British style, so the third option, is not so consistent, because in Trinidad or in Guyana or in Barbados or in Jamaica, so the 4 main provenances for this style, they are very different kind of rums, because of the history and because of the evolution of the countries, and so the evolution in the relationship with the production and the consumption of rum, mainly in Europe. Consider that all these territories historically were former colonies of the European, and so the British one is much more complex than the others, and so also the styles of production of their rums are very different. So, for example, this is Jamaica. In Jamaica, you can find that there are 6 distilleries, some of them producing with very ancient style and old pot stills. So a style of production that is similar to single malt whiskey, for example. So discontinuous distillation, even if the stills are different. But in Jamaica, not very far, you can find mass production, because there are also plants producing for big brands, so major brands, and so they have to produce in a more industrial way with modern technologies, and so the style of rum that comes out from these big refineries is very different than what can be the rum produced in pot stills.
Okay, so rum, it has a complex history in terms of its traditions of production and its exports and how it is handled in different parts of the world. Certainly under the British style, there was very little consistency. You could have rum that was essentially neutral spirit, colored, flavored, sugared, as well as more pure rums that had been barrel aged for decades. So rum was all over the place and all over the map. But as we look to the future and we start to look at the rums that are getting the spirits world excited, we start talking about rum classes like pure single rum and traditional rum in terms of their production method. And in the next episode, we're going to dive into the future of rum under the Gagana classification. So make sure to catch up with us on that one. Cheers.